we want to ensure that we really close out with a workforce focus and just provide some key information that really stems from our leadership culture. And so I'll be covering some information on that, and then I'll go ahead and hand it over to Ben Fyffe, which will also ensure that we touch on focus on fitness, which is a key element of what we want to cover today. Next slide, please. So I want to start first and foremost, as we've reported out information today, a key element of our leadership system is really how we organize through cross-functional teams. So you've heard today 10 separate report outs from teams that are very much focused on not just operational actions that are required in terms of what we need today, but also ensuring that our organizational planning is aligned for what's to come for continuous recovery. So you heard from 10 today, but then also in terms of our ongoing strategic planning and other efforts, you heard yesterday from the Goal 4 team as an example, and that wrapped up our goal team reporting cycle for this fiscal year. So it's critical that throughout the continuity of what's being provided, we're focused throughout this presentation in terms of COVID-19 response and recovery, but also organizational planning on a continuous basis, because that helps ensure that we also connect process improvement in how we approach our work. So as we began this conversation and this report out today and information that was provided, we have an overview from our city manager, but also Chief D'Agostino, that is providing oversight of all the different 10 teams that you've heard from today to ensure that there's that continuity in terms of process improvement. And he also has that background in terms of being a green belt and being able to apply that lens in how we think about processes moving forward. In terms of, I want to spotlight quickly as well, when we talk about leadership development as well as culture, I wanted to provide a snapshot and spotlight one program in particular, that is our tuition assistance program. The reason why that's relevant is that's something that's been in place for some time, but it also is a key tool that's been put in place to ensure that we provide specific upskilling and reskilling opportunities for our workforce. And so ensuring that there's continuity with that and being able to provide that has been critical in terms of workforce development. A quick spotlight that I'll mention on that, as well as while it's been in place for some time in FY16, additional enhancements were added to that to ensure that we continue to provide that opportunity for our workforce. And then lastly, from a communication standpoint, because that's absolutely a critical component of our leadership culture, is ensuring that there's continuous opportunities for two-way communication. So organizationally, what's put in place to ensure that there's that clear line of sight for not only actions that need to be taken, but what's coming next. Weekly strategic briefing reviews are conducted. And then we also have the 500 group, which comprises our leadership within the organization to have touch points on key information that needs to be provided. So formats and different ways that that information is being provided consist of town halls, which is pictured on this slide, and which we'll also be providing virtually. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the tuition assistance program. So here pictured is the most recent 2019 recognition ceremony. And then just to spotlight utilization, this, as I mentioned previously, it's been put in place for several years now, but we're continuing to find ways to really enhance and refine those opportunities so that there's a consistent program that our workforce has available for skill development. Next slide, please. And this just provides a brief snapshot of succession implementation. So it's one thing to put plans in place and provide different types of options to assist with career progression, but wanted just to provide a quick snapshot of what that looks like in terms of recent years and recent activity. So when we look at internal promotions and growing leaders within the organization, there's been 560 over the last 2.5 years alone, and that's across all job types as pictured in the chart on the right. But then there's also been 158 provisional assignments since 2015. So an example, we had 16 in FY15 to 43 this last fiscal year. So those assignments also provide the opportunity to continue to provide career progression and to step into roles as our organization is ready to lead through normal circumstances as well as emergency preparedness, response, and recovery, which is what we've been covering today. Next slide, please. Now, in kind of going back to the previous slide, and we can stay on the slide, but one point that I did want to make in connecting back to something that Dr. Carranza mentioned earlier today, in the context of developing local talent and also reaching out to stakeholders within the community. So in this section, it really connects back to that local talent that we also have internal that's leading these initiatives, and that's really ensuring that our services and our service delivery continues to be exceptional with the challenges that we're facing. And so I wanted to reemphasize the commitment of our workforce. And so during our last employee engagement survey cycle, we had 98% of respondents indicate that they understand their contribution on a day-to-day. So it's one thing to reference the 98%, but it's also another to really look at the high response rate that we have in terms of engagement within that survey. So we're at 87%, which reflects close to 5,200 of our workforce. So if you have that 98% indicating that they understand their contribution, that becomes very evident when we're faced with working through our day-to-day operations and ensuring that we continue with that continuity. I mentioned a bit earlier about process improvement and how that's a key component of how we look at our day-to-day operations, but also what does the future look like in terms of our service delivery. So we have over 500 of our workforce that have engaged in process improvement efforts. And then lastly, we do have 100% departmental reach and continuous improvement training. And that's going to be critical so that as we look to identify opportunities and really look at our existing processes, we're ensuring that that's connected, that there's a clear line of sight, and that we have that basis connected back to our mission, vision, and values that really support not just our leadership culture, but our overall organizational culture and the type of service that we want to deliver to our community. Next slide, please. And then lastly, I want to take a minute to spotlight the continuous efforts of our workforce that's been working through COVID-19. Here pictured as a spotlight, we have our street and maintenance different areas. And so a shout out to Mary Gomez. And so she has pictured here both those folks that are working on site, the 42% that were referenced by Carrie Weston previously, as well as others that have reported out today, but then also those that are working remotely to ensure that those services are being supported and provided from home. And so this just provides you a snapshot of our diverse workforce that's continuing to serve our community, striving to deliver those exceptional services as we look at what's next. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ben Fyffe that's going to share some information in terms of our focus on fitness. Ben?
Thank you, Julie. I want to take the time to highlight this chart again, which Council saw earlier in the presentation, just to underscore that health issues prevalent in our community, namely high blood pressure, diabetes, and obesity, not only increase the risk of contacting COVID-19, but also increase the risk of complications regardless of age. Those factors also put our workforce at risk. 42% of whom you've heard are still working on site, are front-facing, and working selflessly to make sure that operations are continuing and that we're continuing to deliver exceptional service. And in particular, I would like to thank and acknowledge the scores of employees who have willingly taken temporary reassignments with OEM and the health department to step up and work towards enforcement, educating our community, and actively addressing critical needs for emergency operations. I believe that they represent the best of what makes this a strong, collaborative organization working towards common goals and service to our community. Next slide, please. So we'd like to take the opportunity to discuss the importance of the Shape It Up program. As a reminder, it is the city's comprehensive wellness program that can mitigate COVID complicating risk factors, put money in employees' pockets, and also save the city money in insurance costs. Again, by incentivizing wellness, we are ensuring city employees are decreasing risk factors for COVID-19. Next slide. There are 3 incentive levels ranging from $50 to $150 based on 6 fitness tests you see here, administered by Parks and Rec staff. Next slide. For those employees who are unable to potentially complete some of those fitness measures, we also have a biometric option for employees with the same incentive levels and extra points for employees who take part in structured fitness activities like gym visits, yoga classes, and avoiding the use of tobacco. Next slide, please. Beyond the financial benefits, this program directly augments the quality of life of our workforce, ensuring employees who are healthier, stronger, and in the case of our current state of emergency, less vulnerable to factors that can lead to fatality if COVID-19 is contracted. Next slide. There have been a number of success stories related to this program from the over 600 employees who are participating. And we've listed 2 testimonials here. I won't read them to you, but they are from employees at Sun Metro and the airport. And if you think about that, these are 2 very front-facing departments with high levels of public interaction. And so these employees, by taking part in this program, have, again, mitigated some of their risk factors for that. Next slide. As part of the strategy to promote exercise and activity that can reduce those risk factors, Parks and Rec, in coordination with partners, go to the next slide, please. We just covered this. Sorry. So as part of our strategy to promote exercise and activity to reduce the risk factors, we coordinated with partners at the State Park, City Leadership, and Office of Emergency Management to reopen all trails this past weekend with tremendous success. We worked with Streets and Maintenance to install special signage to remind users to maintain social distance and to avoid more difficult terrain that has in the past led to search and rescue operations that divert first responders at a time when we want to reserve resources for pandemic responses. Next slide. So thank you, and now I would like to pass it back to the city manager to wrap up this detailed and comprehensive report for you.
So I want to thank the mayor and council for your patience and giving us the time to present all this information to you. As you can see, this is a very comprehensive report. As we pointed out, we have been working from the very beginning to update you and give you the latest information so that it can be helpful in the decisions that you make as we continue to respond to this pandemic. We stood this cross-functional team to lead and address all aspects of what we need now, what we need as we go into the future. I think it's important to mention that several people in this presentation, some people from outside organizations, mentioned that multidisciplinary teams are very important in terms of change management. This is something that the city of El Paso has been doing for over 5 years. We did that as a result of the strategic plan. I think Emma Schwartz talked about change management, and we've had cross-functional teams in place for over 5 years. And we really feel that that breaks down silos and really helps attack different problems so that we can come up with solutions. We use a cross-functional team on the electric utility issue. We use cross-functional teams for the Shape It Up program. We use cross-functional teams to set up the strategic planning process that Julie Baldwin headed up, if you recall. All of that organically